Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. And let me thank the speakers for their very insightful presentations to us. The fact that 60 years after the adoption of Resolution 1710, which launched the first United Nations Development Decade, 33 out of the 55 African countries are classified as least developed can only be a reflection, in our estimation, of the broken assumptions on cooperation and the lack of adequacy of the inadequacy of the structures, processes, and systems that support international development. We know the objectives that we need to pursue and have always known the goals that are required to achieve effective international development, yet decade after decade, we are thrown into a never-ending cycle of recommitment that is not backed by the required resources or political will. It is therefore our hope that this meeting will be able to prioritize and recalibrate Africa's partnerships for the development of the continent. I would want to highlight a few key messages. First, without a doubt, Africa is conscious of and committed to its own development, as reflected in the adoption of Agenda 2063, which in large measure in many parts has close alignment with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. However, confronted with a legacy of drained financial resources from the continent, it will be important for the cost of global capital to be discounted by the moral imperatives of the past in support of Africa's ambitious aspiration, including for the implementation of the SDGs. In this regard, we note that the continent's efforts to tap into the growth potentials of the Continental Free Trade Area, as well as the Pan-African payment system to unlock new funds for its developments would be something that the international community can support. Secondly, we are in a global crisis which impacts the financially less endowed countries more. And as we've heard, there's a need to focus on the food security situation. Ghana therefore calls for global solidarity and partnerships to address the food and energy crisis and to resuscitate struggling economies. I believe that for the countries of Africa, this in the short term is best reflected through support for the continental initiatives such as the African Development Bank's $1.5 billion emergency food production facility, as well as its call last May in Accra, Ghana, for Africa's envisaged share of the $100 billion SDR reallocation to be channeled through the bank in order for it to create leverage and extend the reach of the envisaged finance. Thirdly, the work of the UN system on Africa, as well as those of the international financial institutions, must be aligned more closely to the aspirations of Africa. This may require a restructured international financial system in the long run, but in the short term, we cannot ignore the need for the UN development programs to be more closely related to the African-led and driven programs, as well as for the lending facilities to be concessional and debt sustainable. Before I conclude, I want to draw attention to the fact that there's a need for more commitment, particularly by developed economies, to the issue of the tax reforms, as well as to the illicit financial flows from the continent, which UNCTAD estimates at around about $88 billion every year. I thank you, Mr. Moderator.